Watch this.
The fate of the Meridian Library has been decided, and they are here to stay. How'd that happen? Well, because the concerned citizens of Meridian, I believe the phrase is called, got ratioed. An all-new abortion bill was supposed to fix all the issues with Idaho's abortion laws. The Democrats debated it didn't. Then they walked out.
If there was a vote tomorrow to make Grant County part of Idaho, how would you vote?
To leave?
You'd become Idaho.
Yes.
We're continuing our coverage of the Greater Idaho movement with the help of KGW. Can Oregon patch things up with Eastern Oregon, or is it too late? Well, the anti-library rhetoric got hit with a unanimous gut punch today, at least for those in Meridian. Ada County commissioners all voted today to deny a petition asking for the termination of the Meridian Public Library District. That petition was the latest step in an 18-month debate between the library and a group calling themselves the Concerned Citizens of Meridian. The group says sexually inappropriate materials are in the library and they're just available there for kids. And if they couldn't get their way in a public meeting, well, they believe trying to demolish the library entirely in a public vote was their only recourse. Logistically, commissioners say it's not that easy. Here's Andrew Bartline.
Yes, let's get on the record.
For what seemed like a back-and-forth debate,
Yes. Yes.
Mary Mosley never saw the writing on the wall.
That is dissolution of the library district, the appropriate remedy.
That's because the Ada County commissioners saw the writing
Lots of material comes in there.
on the cards.
When I was getting people to sign postcards and write postcards in favor of the library.
Favored by a massive margin.
There was 1,072 people emailed us opposed to a dissolution. There was 55 in favor of a dissolution.
And reflected by the county commissioners in a unanimous vote to strike down the petition process and uphold the existence of the Meridian Public Library.
During the pandemic, they first started attending our meetings.
Jeff Kohler is the library trustee vice chair. He says the board has been meeting with the concerned citizens of Meridian for 18 months.
I'm disappointed that they would take this approach to try to blow the whole thing up. There's other avenues. If they don't like the policies of the board, as the commissioners pointed out today, there's other avenues. They can run for seats. There's an election in 2 months where there will be 2 seats for trustees on that ballot, and they're welcome to vote their conscience at that time.
In the deliberation, county commissioners pointed to several consequences of dissolving the library district. Legally, the county would have to sell the library assets to pay off all debts, including a new $14 million bond. Then they'd reinvest that money if a new library was to be created at a later date.
Fiscal conservatism, absolutely.
Maybe that saved you a little bit.
Maybe it did.
Michael Hahn is the Concerned Citizens spokesperson, and these consequences didn't concern him at all.
We were focused on protecting the children, and it takes work to do that, and if that was the case, then so be it.
Because he says the current case doesn't listen to his voice.
There is no vehicle to get it changed, so it's up to the library.
At the very least, the petition was to bring awareness.
They said that's the most number of people that have shown up for a meeting at the courthouse, so yeah, I think we were successful.
So this is not
Successful,
in any means the end of the discussion.
just not enough to see the writing on the wall.
This has been a distraction, and I hope we can move on.
We'll only see the writing on the shelves, protected by the writings of the people.
I'm happy about the decision, but I hope that people don't go home and stop thinking about the library. I think that we need to elect competent trustees who have the best interests of the library at heart.
As you just heard there is a trustee election in a few months with a pair of seats up for grabs. Michael Hahn tells me that he and his group, the Concerned Citizens of Meridian, do have candidates and are looking at running for those seats. And there's other options, that could happen. One of the commissioners brought up, Brian, that there could be like a recall vote. You find 50% of the number of people who voted in the last trustee election. I think it was around 1,000, so around 500, 560 signatures. They could have a recall vote on trustees. So there's other avenues to go toward if they don't like what the library district is doing, and the commissioners just decided that what they're doing here to dissolve the whole thing isn't a path that they would like to see
Wasn't
happen.
feasible. You know, our partners at the Idaho Press came up with a list that the Concerned Citizens of Meridian put out, a list of 56 books that they say they want removed from the library, half of which more than half of which aren't even on shelves in the Meridian Library District.
Now, that's part of the interesting part, too, is this has become a national discussion.
Yeah.
We know we've seen this in other states. When we talk with the library district, they don't exactly know where this is coming from. When we talked with the woman who just supports them as someone who goes to the library, she's frustrated with it, too. I asked Michael Hahn that same question. Where does this come from? He says he can't speak to what's going on in other places. He just knows he doesn't like what he's seeing here, and that's why he's involved with the group. But
what they put on their list here of reasons why they want the books removed, I would say 85% say LGBTQ content.
There are common denominators.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. Well, seeing as how they were trying to end the session by March 24th, which would have been last Friday, there has been a frantic stretch here at the end where lawmakers, especially on the Senate side, have extended their work days and have been trying to squeeze through as much legislation as they can. And to do that, well, you have to move quickly. And sometimes that means moving bills quickly. House Bill 374 would be an example of that. Not on the Senate side, but on the House side, obviously. It's a last-minute legislation sponsored by Republican Representative Megan Blanksma, which would address some of the issues Idaho doctors have with the state's recent abortion laws. Printed yesterday, slipped into the State Affairs Committee meeting this morning.
These three things that it adds are the removal of a dead unborn child, the removal of an ectopic or molar pregnancy, and the treatment of a woman who is no longer pregnant.
It would also remove the affirmative defense clause of the law, which would make it so a doctor won't have to prove their innocence in terms of an abortion instead of the other way around, the way the law states they have to. That hearing lasted about an hour, and the bill was sent directly to the House floor. 11-2 was the vote in the meeting. 90 minutes later, House Bill 374 was on the House for debate. It was on the floor with several Democrats standing up to say, our abortion laws are forcing women to carry non-viable pregnancies, and this bill does not change that.
Fast forward in my pregnancy, and I had to sit with my doctor when I developed preeclampsia to make a decision whether or not to carry my baby to term and risk my health or have my baby early. And I was lucky because it was at the end of my pregnancy, but not before I was incredibly sick. And at that moment, with that conversation with that doctor, I didn't invite any of you into that room to help me have that discussion because you don't belong there. We do not belong in that room.
You know, the real reason that we have abortion laws on the books is that, unlike the good lady from 18, unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this world who do not value the life of a baby in the same way that many of us do.
Well, shortly after Representative Green finished her debate, she walked off the House floor, along with the rest of the House Democrats. You see this video here, they start stepping out, even while some debate is still happening. And then notice the vote at the end of the debate, where the bill passed 59-1. Notice the number of those absent. 10 of the 11 of the Democrats, all of them were out, 11 were. That was a misplaced vote by Representative Sue Chu. Democratic leader Alana Rebel said their caucus was fed up with this process. The bill wasn't a good solution, and they wanted to make a statement. Meanwhile, Representative Blanksma said the Democrats are there to represent their constituents, and by walking out, they didn't really do that. They've had 11 weeks to get something done, but instead, Idaho lawmakers are trying to push through a property tax bill, or we're trying to push through a property tax bill here at the 11th hour. So we've got some breaking news when it comes to this, because Joe Paris has been following this closely when it comes to property tax and what's happening at the State House. So where do we stand? Will we see some property tax relief?
Well, just in the last few minutes, Brian, we found the answer is yes. The Idahoans will be getting property tax, and it's something that they've talked about really all session long. As we've established, the lawmakers, they didn't need to pass property tax in order to adjourn, but Idaho Democrats and Republicans, they told me early today that it's something that they both want to do. They say doing nothing on property tax in the face of major attention on the topic was never really an option.
Politically, I mean, and just personally, I just heard from so many people, seniors who are being priced out of their homes. I mean, personally, I would not feel comfortable leaving the building to my, in terms of facing my constituents unless we did something really serious on property taxes.
I hope we find a solution. We'll see what happens with the Senate and the veto override. They'll have a vote on that, I hope today or tomorrow. Once they have that vote, you'll know if we've got it solved or if we've got to try to do another bill. So we have to wait and see what happens in the Senate with the veto override.
So the Senate veto override holds a lot of power right now, and if you missed it, the House and Senate, they both passed property tax legislation by a large margin. Governor Little saw issues with it. The Idaho House addressed those with the trailer bill, and then they voted to override the governor's veto.
Makes it a lot simpler, gets us out of here a lot faster. We'll have to do a couple trailer bills to fix a couple issues that were concerns of the governor's. There's one trailer bill following to address his concerns because he brought up some good points. We want to be sure to address those. And I think you could actually end up with more property tax relief, because if that bill passes, you've got the school facilities fund. And there's still a little money sitting around here we could stuff in there, which would help give more property tax relief. So it gives us some options if it gets overridden.
So now we're kind of back to ground zero, where we're either going to end up with a dangerous property tax bill that I think is going to give rise to serious problems, or we could be here for a very long time while they hammer it out.
Okay, well, they hammered it out, and just a short time ago, as we were getting on the air, the Idaho Senate, they approved an override to Governor Little's veto on House Bill 292. That's the controversial property tax relief package, and we can actually take a look right now at the Idaho Senate. You can see that's the Lieutenant Governor Scott Bedke presiding over the Senate as they are working late into the evening, but we do now know that 292, the property tax package, that will become law, and we will get reaction and what this means in the coming days. But we do know that the governor's office, I actually just spoke with them a few minutes ago. They tell me that they were pushing for meaningful property tax relief and that they saw some issues with the original bill 292. But now that the legislature, the House and the Senate, has addressed the issues that the governor saw, that they're good with the override veto, so to speak. The governor calling it meaningful property tax relief. His office telling me that it's not the full amount they were hoping to get, but it's very close to that. So that basically is a check mark on the governor's I guess his agenda for the year. But there's still a lot going down at the State House right now, and the question is this chaos at the end of the session to get major legislation done, or is this weeks of work coming to fruition? As you can imagine, it depends who you ask down there.
For months, we were just sitting here going on and on about banning books and going after librarians and going after trans kids and banning drag shows and all of this social issue nonsense that is not going to help people pay their bills or help their kids get a better education. And we kept pushing and pushing to give proper time and energy and focus to real bread and butter issues. Unfortunately, those were all left to the very last minute.
If you watch what happened this year on the property tax, the House introduced those bills early. And 292 is just a combination of a whole bunch of people's ideas. And so I think that, the public gets frustrated, and I don't blame them because we all want it done now. But sometimes these issues is it soup yet, I guess is the saying I like to say. Have we got to the point where it's ready to eat? Has it cooked long enough, stewed long enough, simmered long enough, whatever? Is it to the point that it's ready to go? And that's what you deal with property taxes, especially since they're so dadgum confusing.
So the property tax meal is ready to digest, Brian, and we'll find out if the people of Idaho end up liking it or not. Real quickly, I just want to say, as they are trying to wrap up, we did just learn they are introducing one more item tomorrow on sexual exhibitions. That'll be heard at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. So as lawmakers are wrapping up, we are seeing some new things still introduced tomorrow.
That have to do with morality going through tomorrow. All right. Thanks, Joe. We are continuing our week-long look at Greater Idaho, the movement to move the border and make Idaho bigger or make Oregon smaller, depending on how you look at it. It would affect Oregon, I should say, by almost 70% of their landmass just gone. Not the coast, at least not yet. 11 of Oregon's 15 eastern counties have already agreed to consider this border change, but the idea hasn't gotten too far in either of our legislatures. What has moved a lot is the cultural divide between those living on either side of the Cascade Mountains. In part two, our sister station in Portland spoke with a board member for the Greater Idaho movement. Here's Pat Doris from KGW's The Story.
You know, Oregon when I was a child, was a great place. There was a lot of money for schools because most of it was timber money. And the timber taxes supported the schools and the counties and everything. This was a prosperous state at that time. And then we started getting into the spotted owl and all of the controversy with that.
In the late 1980s and early 90s, timber harvests did change. A 2017 report from a group called Headwater Economics noted that Grant County alone lost at least $30 million in timber earnings during the years 2001 through 2014. These days, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income in Grant County is $51,100 per year. As of 2021, Grant County had 7,272 people. It's 94% white. The median home price is $160,000. 90% have at least a high school degree. 17% have a bachelor's degree or above. Gilson said she loves her community. Her roots run deep in Oregon. But her small-town lifestyle kept her from ever feeling connected to the west side of Oregon or its big cities.
I mean, I started driving when I was 5 years old because we were raised on a farm. I started working full-time in the hayfields when I was 8 for the summers. The high school I went to closed if there was a major branding at one of the ranches because we all went to work. You know, hunting season shut down the school for a week. It's just a different lifestyle out here, not bad or different, you know.
Not judging one that's better than the other, but
just different.
Another sign a relationship is crumbling is when one side believes the other no longer has their best interest in mind. They lose trust in the relationship. They begin to watch for evidence to back up the feeling.
Good afternoon. The House will come to order.
I watched last year as Tina Kotek was the leader of the House. And she said, I am going to work with the Republicans to set up the new districts. And then it got time to do it, and she said, no, I don't think so. It would make me question whether it's possible. I mean, she had all right to do that. But it made us all feel like this side doesn't get listened to.
That actually happened in 2021, not last year. It came during congressional redistricting when voting boundaries were changed in Oregon, as they are every 10 years. But Sandy is correct. It did happen. More signs of a failing relationship, different values, and an imbalance in power.
You know, it's been 40 years since we've had a Republican government, you know, and there's been the feeling of it walking away from the values that we hold out here, the family values, the taking care of our neighbors and being able to care for ourselves. Those values seem to be pushed aside in the Oregon government, and more that the government's here to take care of you and tell you what to do, versus you get to live your life and the government's here to provide the services that are needed to support you in that.
is there any chance of reconciliation in your mind? Is there anything the state could do that would make you change your mind?
Move your government out here and live here. See what it's like for us out here. But I don't think that there's the willingness to do that. I don't think we don't have delivery pizza. We don't have, you have to be totally and completely self-sufficient out here. And a lot of people that live in the cities can't. It's a totally different lifestyle. and a value system that's totally different.
The governor's talking about doing a listening tour. You think that would make any difference to you?
It would. We welcome the opportunity to speak with the governor. We would love to have an opportunity to sit down and speak with her like we are speaking now, and having a conversation that was equal give and take on both sides. Do I think it would change anything? No.
And it wouldn't make you feel heard?
No.
I asked Sandy if it would matter if the state tried harder to limit the impact of statewide laws that may not fit well in rural Oregon.
Maybe, but I think Oregon has gone too far to where they can't come back. I don't think, and nor would I want them to. They have a right to live their life the way they want to live it. I'm just asking to live my life the way I want to live it under a government that I feel will allow that.
And you don't think the current government will?
No.
Why do you think Idaho would?
Idaho has more of the values we have. Idaho is more conservative, is more rural. We match Idaho better in just populations, county density, county areas, the type of industries that we have here. It's just a match in so many of those ways.
It's kind of like a mirror, Oregon and Idaho right now, right? Things happening on the opposite side. We're continuing our Greater Idaho series tomorrow with a stop in the only two cities in Harney County. It's where 63% of the people voted for Greater Idaho, but not the owner of one of the pot shops there. Greater Idaho would have a great impact on her business. All right, let's get right to your comments today. Talking a little bit about Greater Idaho and the movement to move Idaho's border westward to kind of incorporate a lot of eastern Oregon, because they have the same values as Idaho, they say. And this one from, I believe, like the Republicans in Idaho have my interest as a Democrat in mind. Idaho's been Republican for 40 years. It's quite obvious they do not have Democrats' interest in mind. That one is from Jackie. This one just sent in from John as well. I can appreciate Eastern Oregon not feeling like they are receiving representation. As an Idaho native, the Idaho legislature and governor do not represent me or my family in any way, shape, or form. Embarrassed to say I am an Idahoan. Brian, I would have walked out too. This is what we're talking about, the House Democrats walking out today during the abortion bill debate. I would have walked out too. Glad my representatives made their statement on my behalf, says Larry in Boise. The Meridian Library is safe for now. However, the threat is not over. The attacks on the LGBTQ community will continue, says Jack in Boise. One other one here, I do believe. Thank you, Ada County Commissioners, for voting to keep the Meridian Library in place. Now, those parents who are trying to get rid of it will just have to be parents to their own kids only. And as Joe mentioned, there is another bill coming before the State House, or in the State House tomorrow, that is looking at exhibitions. We believe it is another drag show bill. We'll get you up to date on that tomorrow. Stay tuned. We'll see you then.